tonight. I've always had various trials, hardships, problems, but who hasn't, right? When my life-changing trial began, I was 33 years old. Diana, my wife, and I had been married for 10 years. We had 2 young daughters, Madeline, who was 6, and Megan, who was 1. I was not prepared for this problem, this trial. Nothing could prepare me. It caught me by surprise. In an instant, my life changed forever. Actually, our family changed forever. They say that deep life trials draws you away from the Lord, or they draw you to the Lord. They say deep life trials draw you to your spouse, or they draw you closer together. Life was steadily moving along. I was doing well at work. Church was great. Life was good. Suddenly, everything changed. I entered into a trial that stopped me dead in my tracks. The Lord now had my full attention. Nearly 15 years ago, July 1st, 2003, I woke up with severe double vision. I never experienced anything like that before. When I was a kid, I crossed my eyes every now and then just for fun, but this was different. This did not go away. This was extreme. It lasted. Being scared was an understatement. I talked to Diana about my double vision problem. We called our optometrist. Here's where you start to see God's hand. He had one appointment left at the exact time I could make it there. So I got there. He spent 3 hours with me. In the midst of his other patients, he spent 3 hours with me. Who does that? No one. God, again, had his hand in our situation. He never told me what he thought it was, but I believe he knew. He asked me for my doctor's phone number, his name and his phone number. He went into an inner room and he talked to him for a while. He then handed me the phone. I talked to my doctor and he said, I want you to go to the hospital and have a brain MRI immediately. I'm going to arrange it all. Just go there, get there safely. I didn't know what a brain MRI was. I just knew it wasn't good. My doctor told me to stay in the MRI waiting room until after he called me, which he said would be about 30 minutes. I went to the hospital, had the brain MRI. I sat in the waiting room, which seemed like an eternity. He called me in 30 minutes, and he explained to me that I had multiple sclerosis. After he said that, I didn't really hear much else. I was in shock. My mind went numb. I didn't know whether to scream or to cry. I had no idea. Multiple sclerosis? What was that? None of my family had multiple sclerosis. I didn't even know anyone who had multiple sclerosis. That night was a difficult night for our family. I was in my prime. Our family had 10 good years together, and they were getting better. We cried together. We prayed together. We poured our hearts out to the Lord. The Lord was showing us to depend on him in a whole new way. I knew that both of our lives had just changed forever. I understood that we had a long, hard road ahead of us. I knew that pretty much everything would change, but what I didn't know was that everything would change. I knew that we were in for the spiritual fight of our lives. To spiritually combat this, I had to go back to the basics of my faith, to spiritually realign myself with the Lord. I knew that the Lord was in control and that he loved my family. I knew that he had a plan and this somehow fit into it. I knew that he was with me. I just had no idea where he was taking me and my family. This was all uncharted territory. For me, going through multiple sclerosis, for Diana, helping me through it, and for my kids, seeing Dad suffer and struggle. I dove into the Word. I poured into it like I never had done before. I was looking for comfort. I was looking for hope. I was looking for any answer I could find. Diana found a good neurologist for me, and I started taking daily shots for my MS. We began to read books about MS and learn about it. I learned that some things that I would be expecting, and I learned about things I did not want to happen. I learned that there are 4 different kinds of MS with varying symptoms. MS is not like a cookie cutter where you can predict, it's predictable. Because each type of MS reacts differently to each person, there's no way to predict anything, ever. MS is a difficult disease to diagnose. It usually takes months or years to diagnose through trial and error. But I had an accurate diagnosis in 30 minutes. Again, clearly the Lord was with us. We kept learning about MS, and none of it was good. In short, multiple sclerosis is a disease where your body attacks your central nervous system. So literally every single function of your body is affected to varying degrees. It's a progressive disease, which means every symptom gets worse. There is no cure. No one knows how you get MS, and medicine only slows it down a little bit. Time went on, and my MS was on schedule. It kept progressing, and it was very noticeable. It quickly took over my whole body. I continued to pour into prayer and into the Word. Psalm 50, verse 15 says, "Call upon me in the day of trouble, and I will deliver you, and you shall glorify me." I knew that He was with me, but He didn't deliver me from MS. I was learning that He was standing with me. He was standing with me like He was standing with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the furnace. He was standing with me like He was standing with Daniel in the lion's den. Over time, I learned that was much better than being delivered from it. I learned that if God delivered me from MS in the beginning, I would not have seen what He has done for me and in me and through me. It would have been a great miracle, but I would have missed so many of His glorious miracles in me. This is where it got hard. I had to relearn almost everything, starting with the basics. I had to relearn how to read because my eyes jumped like an EKG when I would read. I had to readjust how to watch TV because I still dealt with double vision on a minor scale, but I still dealt and I had to choose which eye to watch TV with. I had to readjust how to walk because my constant equilibrium problems made me stagger, stumble, trip, and look drunk. I had to readjust how to sleep because my legs would shake and jump. I had to readjust how to be in group conversations because my mind became so confused. It took me so long to figure out what they were actually saying, but by the time I figured it out, they were on a new topic. I had to readjust how to speak because I struggled with sentence formation. It made sense in my mind, but what came out was not clear at all. When I talk about equilibrium problems, everything affected my equilibrium. Whether I was inside or outside, both cold and warm temperatures threw off my equilibrium. For example, during the winter, when I wore a coat for the cold weather, I was dizzy because my body was warm with the coat, but my face was cold from the outside. I couldn't really walk or stand well. My body could not adjust. If I did a task that involves physical labor, such as raking leaves or vacuuming, it dramatically affected my equilibrium, and I had to sit down many times to wait for my balance to return. Repetitive movements, such as windshield wipers in the rain, caused me to pull my car over and wait until either the storm passed or my equilibrium became normal again. Just as a side note, I struggle with every one of these today. Through trial and error, I was learning how to manage my symptoms. With walking, I learned that walls and countertops and railings and people's shoulders were tremendous help because they gave me stability. When my equilibrium was bad, I learned that drinking a glass of water and sitting down for a while helped it to pass. Soon, all these problems paled in comparison to my largest problem, which began to show. My largest problem was short-term memory. That's why I'm glued to my notes. We noticed it from time to time. Now it was happening constantly. When I realized that short-term memory was a serious problem, I prayed and poured my heart out to the Lord. I asked specifically that if my memory really begins to fail, that He would honor one thing, that He would never allow me to forget Him or His Word. Time marched on. All of my symptoms just kept getting worse, which made my struggles more difficult. It is such a humbling disease. There I was, unable to do many things I used to do, and Diana had to help me through all of it. Worries began to settle in. We've only been married for 10 years. What's going to happen to us? Statistically, the odds were against us. In a healthy marriage, the divorce rate was 50%. In a marriage with a spouse having a disabling disease, the divorce rate was 75%. We both continued to pour our hearts out to God and into the Word. About 2 years later, Diana asked me, she said, "You forget a lot of things, but you don't seem to forget things about the Lord. Why is that?" I paused and smiled because I knew why. The Lord brought it to my mind. I remembered back to my prayer. I explained to Diana exactly what I asked the Lord a couple years earlier. He honored that. Again, we saw the Lord's hand directly with us. As of today, I've struggled with multiple sclerosis for nearly 15 years. It has cost me 4 job losses. After my second job loss from MS, my symptoms began to spiral out of control from the stress of losing another job. My neurologist told me that he had to shock my system and stop the downward progression. I had 2 rounds of chemotherapy. It helped for a while. After my 3rd job loss from MS, I had a medical procedure to try to help my symptoms. 4 doctors performed angioplasty on my jugular veins to widen them. This again helped for a while. After my 4th job loss, we decided I should go on to disability. It was clear I could no longer work full-time. It was an 8-month application process. I was accepted the first time I applied. It's highly unusual for a person to be accepted the first time you apply for disability. It usually takes many times, which turns out to be years, if you're accepted at all. Again, we saw God